All right. Hello, hello. My name is Sitara, your host for Beyond the Physical Summit. We have an incredible guest today. We've got Jaymin Patel. Yes,
Everyone,
welcome, welcome. Thank you for being here.
so excited to be here.
Wonderful. All right. So Jamin and I met in Bali during the pandemic. We were blessed with I would say, biggest blessing of my life was to spend the entire pandemic in Bali. So
It was
lovely to
incredible.
meet you there. We're excited to be collaborating now. Jamin is a growth coach and soul mentor. He's the author of 8 books and has been a speaker for over 10 years. So, Jamin, can you tell us a little bit about that and what your soul calling is?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks again for having me. So excited to be here. Hello, everyone. Coming at you from Bali, even though I got desert vibes in the room. I'm a man of the desert, live on a tropical island, but I come into the desert vibes. So, yeah, so as you said, I'm a growth coach and soul mentor. What does that mean? Well, what that means is that ultimately work with people on their soul level to understand who and what they are truly here for, and to help them shine as their true authentic selves. And that's really been my own journey. I grew up in a loving environment, but also one that wasn't full of a lot of function, like many people. And so you had an alcoholic parent, a narcissistic parent, there was physical abuse. And what I found in that environment to feel safe was people pleasing and overachieving. And this people pleasing and overachieving took me on a wild journey of, getting straight A's, graduating a year early from high school, getting a full ride scholarship to university, being the apple of my parents' eye, working at a Fortune 500 company in a leadership development role, managing a team of 26 people when I was 22 years old, going to a
Wow.
top MBA program, picking up a secondary master's in public policy management. Why not? Then working for a top management consulting firm, ultimately becoming one of the top 5% of earners in the United States, 25 and up, when I was just 24. So, I got the condo, I had the car, I had everything that I loved. And it just, after a while, felt hollow. It wasn't fulfilling me. I was doing what everyone else wanted. And I was stuck in what I call the achievement game. And through a series of life events, including falling in love with a man for the first time in my life and not understanding that experience, getting let go from work, which is the biggest blessing of my life because I wanted to leave but couldn't, and then going to Burning Man and discovering radical self-expression. All of this kind of happening in a 1 year period where my life completely flipped and my broken heart, and my newly expressed, connection to psychedelics and the world of consciousness, took me on a whole new journey. And that journey was, how can I escape this achievement game of always trying to be these things for other people, which kept me safe earlier, and just radically express myself, not just on the playa for 10 days, but everywhere in my life. And where could that take me? And so now what I've done is I've over 10 years invested about $500,000 into getting coached with some of the most amazing coaches on the planet because of this drive to be in my truth. And I've now synthesized and collected all of that and created my own stuff, to create what I call the fully lived method. And I helped, have people exit the achievement game and shift the point in which their body they're operating from and living from and creating from to a much more centered self, authentic place, so that they can enter what I call the fulfillment game. And that means that you're already fulfilled with what you're doing and you're simply creating with way less effort and you end up achieving way more. And this means achievement in business or money, but also relationships, sexuality, parenting, the whole shebang. So I love people who are living their lives fully lived. And I truly believe that the more paragons or models of excellence we have out there doing this, the more permission we give others to do the same. And we're all permission creating machines, whether we, admit it or not. And our action and our inaction causes ripples. And so when I see authentic human beings shining as who they truly are, I know that ripples into their family, into their work, into their community. And people say, whoa, I can do that. And then the world shifts. And that's my way of changing the world.
I absolutely love that. You said a couple things in that I had to write down that I've never heard before, and I want to highlight the one that really stood out: the permission creating machines.
Yeah.
Whether we like to say it or not, that one I absolutely love that one. And in the times where I have felt yeah, constricted and had somebody that had already like gone beyond that constriction. There's another woman that calls them expanders, but
Okay.
expanders are different as in the sense that it's like a role model or someone that you see already doing something that you're doing. Whereas the
Yeah.
permission granted machine sounds more like inner circle, like people that are around you that you're actually speaking and interacting with. So can you talk a little bit more about that?
100%. Yeah, 100%. Like I've written 8 books and like people are like, oh my gosh, wow. I'm like, I just literally had a colleague in business school who graduated and wrote a book. And I'm like, wow, if he did it, then I could do it. So then I wrote my first book. And I
Yeah.
was probably 26 years old. And it went on to become an incredible success. And so but then I wrote more. I was like, okay, I did it once, I can do it again. And people are like, oh my God, you've written 8 books. And then they get inspired and then they want to write their first book because they're like, cool, if you did it, I could do it, right? Same sort of thing.
Hmm.
So it could be big things in life. It's like I walk down the street and I'm like just falling in love with everyone because I'm like, oh my God, I love your hair. I love your style. I love your clothing. I love your aura. I love your family. Like I fall in love with what I see and all of it informs me as to what's possible, right? Like I would hang out with the goth kids. I'd hang out with the nerds. I'd hang out with the football team. I'd hang out with, the band. Like I would hang out with everyone because I'm just so curious about what they bring and how I can expand into my full being by being with a diverse set of people. That's why I've lived in or visited 60 countries because I want to know like what exists for me in all of these corners. So why I work with 100 plus coaches. I wanted to know what can they give me in their downloads to expand who I am and get more permission to be in my sexual nature, to be in my dark self, to be in my divine masculine, to be in my parental figure, to be in my little kid. All of those things are important and all of them make up who I am. And so I've received permission ultimately from all these people my whole life to be where I am now. Just no way I would imagine that I grew up cleaning motel rooms. So I never
Right.
thought I'd be where I am now, but I am. And it's truly because I received permission from people around me to say, huh, I'm going to go do that. And I think that's what I'm here for is for people to receive me and be like, wow, you can have it all. Like, look at your life. And people reflect that to me constantly. Like, how do you do everything that you do? And I'm like, it's not that bad. It's pretty easy. I had 4 lovers at one time. And people were like, I can barely handle one. How are you having 4 relationships right now? And, we never had a fight across 4 women. Imagine no jealousy, no feeling left out. Why? Because I'm just tuned in and I know the things. I know the communication, I know the boundaries, I know the requests, I know how to create all the things so that everyone is met. And I know conscious sexuality and retaining my seed and bringing the energy up. And, like it actually filled my life with creativity instead of at all feeling depleting. And it was beautiful, but it took a lot of work to be the man that could be
Right.
in space. And that's ultimately what the fully lived method is it's expanding if on one end, we are permission making machines, on the other end, we are people who need to expand in our receivership, right? A lot of the things in life is just like, oh, we can't hold all that's there. Number one, we can't hold ourselves. So there's worthiness issues. But then once we get to that, there's, wow, even more, even more. Here in Bali is the most beautiful hotel resort I've seen anywhere. And believe me, I love fancy hotels. And what I do is when clients come here to Bali, I take them on private retreat to this place to just expand in their receivership. The whole goal is to just be in the expansiveness of what they can hold and give themselves. And then they're forever changed because our receivership expands beyond our own level of worthiness, whereas most people are feeling unworthy. So they keep working, they keep trying to make more money, they keep trying to create that new piece of art or whatever it might be, chase the relationship goal. But instead, they could just actually be a magnet and attract the thing they want. You know a lot about this
Right.
when they're in alignment with themselves. But when that story is there of the nervousness and the settling for the next thing or whatever it might be available, We're telling the universe, no, actually, I'm cool with what I have. This is the gap for people. And there's two gateways to get there that I see. Number one is the worthiness piece, the expanding of the receivership. And the second one is the emotions, right? It's amazing what kind of incentive systems emotions have, that we may not even realize. And we may choose something that's safe and mediocre because the other thing just has so much sensation around it. Could be too much joy, could be too much fear, could be too much excitement, could be too much shame, right? And we don't necessarily know how to be with all that. It's funny, one of the guys that I work with was clinically actually diagnosed with depression and didn't want to do the program because he's gonna get married. He's like, I'm gonna miss like a month. I just don't know. And I said, look, believe me, you come in here, you do this work, you will go wild on your wedding day. I promise you. And literally, like he's texting me 10 minutes. He's like, bride is walking down the aisle in 10 minutes. I can't believe what I'm feeling right now. I'm so grateful for you. This never would have happened like this if it wasn't for what we did together. And it's like, if someone like that can pretty much overcome a clinical diagnosis of depression, what can the regular person do that just has a slight bit of anxiety or a slight bit of fear of, big emotions? So it's coming into the mastery of really being able to be with and change the complete narrative that we've been fed about emotions, right? We've been given these stories about emotions that I think just absolutely scare us, like shame. Sitara, like shame is one of my favorite emotions. I have been avoiding that emotion for decades. Decades I've been avoiding shame. And when I feel shame that I feel shame, right? Some of my clients have never even felt the sensation of shame and they feel it for the first time when they're with me and they're like, oh my God, I've never accessed that. And it's like such a poignant moment. So to me,
Right.
we ought to avoid shame, but to me, it's my favorite emotion because it shows me where I'm out of integrity, right? So as soon as I feel shame now, I'm like, oh, wow, okay, oh, I'm feeling this. Let me go into that. Let me be with it. It's like Lassie coming to tell me, there's someone's in the river or whatever, like down the well. It's like, what's going on? Where did I fuck up? And it's like, oh, got it. And this is what I need to do. When I can be with it, I come back into alignment, I come back into integrity, close a new client, fall in love, have a beautiful dinner, like whatever, just it magically begins to unfold again because it's showing me, hey, this is where you're out of integrity. I can go there, resolve it within a few minutes, create an amazing outcome from it, and enhance my life. Whereas most people will just avoid that feeling of shame because they haven't given themselves permission to even go there. So it's stuff like that. Stuff like that is what opens us up to do the permission making and the receivership together.
Right. So I want to go back and kind of magnify one of the things that you said because I feel like you went pretty quick over a point that I think will help a lot of people if we just kind of zoom in.
Totally,
And
let's
that's
get there.
really on that what I would call as an energy worker, right? I would say we transmuted the shame, right? And so you're saying you lean into the shame, you get on the other side of it. So
Yeah.
if we zoom into like that moment, how would you describe that in like when somebody is avoiding something, they finally face it, they finally feel it, and then of course like that dissolution, right? That dissolve. And we know
Yeah.
that a majority of the population is running away, is drinking away, is scrolling away, is, like promiscuousing away, like whatever it is, the pain that they don't want to feel. And ultimately, it's that moment that literally usually lasts, like, let's say, less than 2 minutes at most. It could be 10 seconds to 2 minutes at most. And then you feel that, and literally the entire behavior pattern of whatever that was, it's like it dissolves.
Yeah.
So can you go into a little bit more about that piece? Because I think that one would be super helpful for, yeah,
Totally.
anyone who's listening and
Yeah.
resonating.
And this is a huge part of choosing you because your
Hmm.
experience at that moment is having that emotion. But
Right.
everything in our programming has been telling you, don't go there. Do this other thing. Get onto socials, send a text. Like, look, it's important. Like, let's just like move the energy over there. Let's not go over there because there's no access point. There's no gateway, right? And people try to mentalize, a lot of times I talk to people about emotions and they're like, oh, I'm feeling this way because of XYZ and this. So you need to separate the emotional sensation that you're feeling from any story. That's first and foremost. You just got that. That's a hard one to do. It takes some support. I have found it's not so easy to just do on your own.
Mhm.
Like staying with and having somebody then be into those uncomfortable areas as you leave the
Okay.
story behind.
Yeah.
Then it takes the mind out and you're with a full emotional sensation. And to me, the idea is kind of a little bit like a roller coaster, right? So we're going up. Let's just say there's like these people would call them positive and negative emotions. I don't believe an emotion is positive or negative. I believe they're comfortable and uncomfortable. So we're experiencing a comfortable emotion. Let's just pretend that's joy. That's not the truth for everybody, but for most people, joy feels really good. Okay. For some people, it's really anxiety inducing. So you're experiencing joy, and then what happens? Well, now you're like something goes bad in your day, someone cuts you off, your restaurant orders, have a fight with your partner, whatever, and all of a sudden it goes, and then what do? We hold and slow it down, and then we just, it's like the tracks are like screeching, and we're like, nope, we're not doing that. We're gonna do anything else. We're gonna distract, and then we're gonna hear it even longer and longer, right? And could get into depression, right? Because it's just stuffed away. And then what happens? Then we're like climbing our way out of it, right? Now, what would happen if you're on a roller coaster? You come up to the top, you hang for a moment, you see the fall that happened, you let go, you go down, you come up with momentum on the other side. When you come up with momentum, then you're experiencing higher levels of that. But what happens for people up here is that they also, this is a key thing people miss, they forebode joy. So we're moving up and they go, oh no, I shouldn't be so happy. Hold on. And then like Netflix or whatever, like let me ruin something in my life. Let me start an argument. And then they kind of do this. And so most people are like living flatline. They're just avoiding the highs and the lows. To me, life is emotions. You got to feel everything. So the goal is kind of visually to let go here so you can move down and come back up. And here's the thing. The more you can feel the emotions down here, the more they can feel the shame, the fear, the anger, the sadness, the angst, the disgust, whatever that might be. The more depth you have here, the more pleasure, joy, orgasm. I mean, everything that you feel up here, right? So we're
Yeah.
expanding this way and we're learning how to ride the horse instead of just being like flopping around, not knowing what to do. So that's to me what it is. You got to separate the story from the emotion. And you really got to imagine like that roller coaster of like just letting the roller coaster go down and go right into it. To me, there's 4 layers of emotional mastery. And that's like the first one is removing the stories from it. Second one is if there's a charge, like if we're just like our body is, just like teeming with sensation, like we're not going to operate in anything in that moment. So we got to like let some of that charge out, right? And do practices around that. Then we can finally be with and transmute the emotion itself. And then finally, maybe we can learn from it. So those are the kind of areas for emotional mastery to go into for me.
Yeah, I love that. And I've done, thank you for explaining it because it clarifying the emotional landscape, I think is something that is so undervalued in our society, like generally speaking, one of those things that we're not taught, we don't know about unless you've had some sort of traumatizing childhood experience. You generally don't start looking for solutions to why your emotions are so chaotic. And
Yeah.
so to be able, like you were saying, it's like the peaks and the valleys, the spectrum of what you feel, it gets broader. So it's not necessarily, like manic or depressive or like it's not necessarily like that. But what I've noticed, especially being a deeply feeling human being and feeling the wide spectrum of not only my emotions, but the people that are around me, what I have noticed is that the deeper I am willing to feel within myself, it's the more joy that I'm also able to feel. But there's kind of a caveat to that because
Mhm.
I think sometimes we can get so addicted to healing. We can get so addicted to our story and we can get so addicted to the pain itself that those 3 can become just this, I like menage a trois of how do you stay stuck in shadow work?
Oh,
And
dude, yeah,
like
I
it's
have a name for
we're both
this.
like,
Okay.
how it just happens. We've seen it so much.
Yeah,
It's
I have a name
yeah,
for this.
it's
I call it
frustrating.
PMSW. Okay. PMSW, people suffer from this, too much shadow work. Okay.
Too
No,
much shadow work.
people are literally like arriving to lunch and be like, so sorry I'm late. I had my childhood wound around getting attention, so I show up late for attention. But I'm here now. Hi. If you're casually dropping your story and narrative from your childhood programming at lunch as an excuse for why you're late, that is one indicator that you are doing TMSW. Okay. If you are jumping from workshop to workshop to coach, because this one is the one around your shadow, and you keep going back and you're like beating up your little kid for the gold that's in the never ending well, you're doing too much shadow work. Okay. This is all symptoms of TMSW. This is what I teach it in my stuff, of the symptoms of TMSW. And it's one of these funny things, it's like, not to say, let me just be clear, it's amazing to sit in men's circle, it's amazing to sit in women's circle, it's amazing to work on your shadows, it's amazing to go to these workshops, do it. But most people do it in the dumbest way, and I don't think like they understand. And sadly, most shadow work practitioners don't understand or filter out, because they believe in shadow work, so they believe it's just going to work for anyone anytime, so let's just go do it. But here's the thing: when we're doing shadow work, right, we have like layers of maturity. So at low, like very early layers of maturity is when the shadows came on, right? So we know that, and it could be from literal abuse, or it could be from something like really inadvertent, as like the doorbell ringing when we're about to get milk and then mom turned away, and then we create a complex about it. It can be completely innocent. We don't even know it happened before we were at the age of 6. So yeah,
Mhm.
some things happened after that made it worse. Other, don't get me wrong, it's real and it's important. But what I'm saying is some of it could be inadvertent as well. So, and it was, we develop it, and then we develop a maturity while it's still growing with us. And then probably that same level of maturity, we're trying to address it and attack it. No, this is one of the most critical elements of the fully lived method, is if you want that shadow program to let go and shift away, what you need to do first is increase your level of maturity. I have this theory, Sitara, that I don't think I've ever met an adult. I've seen many people in adult bodies that are still with not full adult, like mental, emotional capacity. My aim in life is to be the first adult on this planet. That is legit, like how I view
How
my
would you
life.
define adult?
Yeah, no, adult that knows how to deal with stuff and that doesn't go into all these childhood patterns. So ultimately, you're pattern free, right? Like you literally, like you have the ability to deal with the situation. You have the ability to like speak your truth. I practice this so much with my beloved, right? With my wife of 7 years, it's like, oh gosh, right now, I feel like I've caught you. I want to be righteous. I want to like punish you. I want to like go talk to the relationship coach and say, look how she messed up and look how I'm right. Those are all childish things. That doesn't serve my love for her. The adult thing is like, hey, you made a mistake and I'm feeling hurt right now. And I love you and I know that it was a mistake, right? It's not minimizing what's going on. It's just not subscribing to the drama. This is a layer of choosing you, because you're choosing you and your real experience. I can look at, for example, say like, she made a mistake 6 months ago, and then now she made a similar mistake, or a broken agreement, or whatever. It could be something really big, or just didn't ignore me, whatever. I can look at the 6 months of how she loved me, supported me, made me, cookie dough and popcorn or my favorite treats, right? And the way she's constantly loved and supported me. And then this one thing and be like, aha, I got you. You are actually here to ruin my life. And none of that stuff really mattered. Or I can say, wow, clearly everything that accumulated over the 6 months really mattered. And now you've made one mistake and I'm really feeling hurt. And my childhood self wants to point at you and blame you and kind of be right? But the mature self is just like, well, clearly you love me. I know that. And you've made a mistake and we need to do repair. That needs to happen. But I'm not going to like yell. I'm not going to scream. I'm not going to point. I'm not going to judge. I'm not going to fall into those behaviors and create more of that in the world. And here's the reality. Majority of us, probably all of us, I would argue, our parents that raised us were not adults, because the parents who raised them were not adults, right? Like they weren't fully in their fully functioning adult. And so for me, the work that I've done, and I'm still doing my work, is to become this like first adult on the planet. So that people can meet me and be like, you just do things so differently. I'm like, yeah, because I healed all the other shit. And this is what an adult will do. I'm discovering it for myself. There are moments daily in my life where I'm like, am I literally doing this? This is amazing. Who am I that I'm choosing this route? Oh my gosh, this is so much better. Why? Everyone should do this. Literally, this is how I experience my life. I'm just like, look at me go right now. Where does that come from? I don't even know, but it's because I'm free. I'm free mostly. I still have work to do. Don't get me wrong. I'm not perfect, but I'm free mostly from all of that programming. And I'm just watching it, seeing it, wanting to tear out and get into the Facebook comment war and la da da. And I'm just like, yeah, okay, like let me just respond in this way and just end this because I'm an adult. Like I know how to just, yeah, be loving here and also be clear and bold at the same time. So to me, that's like the emotional capacity, the mental capacity, the maturity, the communication, the ability to, just create in my world like the things that I want without having all of these things. But it's not working and la, da, da, da. It's like that happens. It's the ability to be with the mature adult self. And I'll tell you what, even in my fully lived method, the shadow work comes way later, way later. We start with the emotional mastery. We come in there first because we're so ridden by these emotions and waves, and we get high on these things, like anger and la da da. We've held them back for so long. So we take a lot of time to do that, and a lot of time, developing the mature adult self around boundaries and requests and sovereignty. I have to have full sovereignty activation around the king and the queen. We leverage archetypes for that, and we build up that self, right? And then we connect that person into the manifester, and the quantum field and all of those things that are beyond the physical, that you can understand your ability as being a creator of your life. And then really, I mean, not just like talk about it, but like get into the daily practice of that, right? And unearth all the things that are there. Only after all of that journey, right? And all the things that entails, then I lead them into the shadow work. And I say, now we're at a point where just watch them fall away because you've done months at this point of the other work, right? And then they do, and then they're just free. But then the self-sabotage comes in. This is like a pattern I see over and over again. We go through all the steps, people are riding high, within like 30 days, they're just like, oh my God, my life is amazing. I'm like, just wait. Like I know, but just like wait, and then eventually the self-sabotage comes. Hey, I don't need to do these practices anymore. Because to me, everything is you're either in pattern or practice. So if you're listening, there's your navigational tool. You're either in pattern and you're gonna get the same results you have exactly right now. Your life is good, but something could be better, but you don't know what they are. This is probably who I'm speaking to right now. Or you're in practice. And every pattern you have has been uncovered and looked at, and you have a practice in place that can replace it. That is a mature adult self practice. This is what we do. It is a series of invitations we do week after week to uncover these. So then you come into this layer of like getting it mentally, mostly embodied. And then we go on, we don't end because the dip happens, the self-sabotage occurs, and every person has gone through the program. And then we get into mastery. This is where we go from this to this. We change the whole core trajectory of the course of someone's growth. That's going along pretty good, right? Most people have done a lot of work when they come work with me. And now we just go, whoop, and those last 2 months, everything becomes embodied. And that's where people go on and they're doubling their business, they're falling in love, they're attracting a partner, they're taking up mountain biking, they have all this like leisure time, they don't know what to do with it. There's just like everything's just happening. And it's like, yeah, and like that's fully lived. Like that's the idea of choosing you and exploring in this one lifetime we have, what is our true essence and how can I live that? To me, that's the most fascinating thing on the planet.
Right. Right. So how would you say that you help people find that true essence within themselves? And what is an indicator that they have truly found what that like core north or that true north is for them?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of what I just said. So, I just laid out pretty much the practice of what I do. What I start with is I have a practice. I created all these amazing practices, right? If you can imagine, I've done men's work for 12 years. Then I, gotten into like the more traditional, like Tony Robbins, la da da stuff. And then I went, here in Bali, I've gone into like sexual shamanism, tantra, some like really edge of the world kind of stuff. I come from my own mythicism within Hinduism and have combined that with a lot of like Stoic philosophy. So it's like taking an amalgamation of things that don't really all exist together, like wisdom houses that have their own kind of paths, and like bringing them all together, right? A lot of people will bring in like Buddhism and yoga and meditation to kind of like have those come together with some tantra, but they won't really touch like kink and ecstasy and plant medicines and that sort of stuff. And I mean, I've been in all those worlds, so bringing them all together, I just collected like so and created some of the most amazing practices to lead people through. So the very first thing I do on a call with someone, even working one-to-one, is just say, okay, let's just take this sense that you have inside your body of what you're here for and articulate it out on the paper. And within the first call, we've articulated exactly what their soul mission is on paper, and they're like, oh my gosh, that is me. And then we find what their shadow program is that's been holding them back and articulate that. And as soon as you have that, now you have a compass. When you're in your soul mission and when your shadow program is taking off, and you absolutely know. And that begins mapping out, we do deeper desire and fear inventory. We get into the subconscious of like what's really under the hood of that you're afraid of, that you want. A lot of times it's the same thing, which is why you don't have it. And then we look at that and we start to unwind, the series of invitations every week to begin to unwind the patterns and create practices that make sense for it's very individuated work, which is why everyone gets different results, but the method works for different people, right? And then we also have the teaching modules as we go through of emotional mastery, like coming into your sovereignty, the kind of understanding you're the creator, and then going into the shadow work, and then into the mastery level. So that journey in that way is the fully lived method, starting with that. The way that is what I just said. You're literally observing your life like, am I just doing this right now? Am I just being yelled at by this person and I'm calmly loving them and just ending it and being pure love and just and like still honoring my emotions, not just like bypassing? Am I really just doing that? Did I really just fall down and now I'm moving into the pain of my bleeding arm instead of holding it and just like really allowing the pain to move through my body in big ripple? Am I just capable of this right now? Like, this is how life begins. It's just like, I had a client, he just told me the perfect fully lived moment. He was just walking down the street with his pregnant wife and his daughter, and the daughter is like jumping on and off the curb, and it's like sunset, in Bali, and it's not even he's on the beach, it's like walking back from the beach, so it's just like an alleyway, right? Not even like super beautiful place. And he's just in this moment, and he's like, oh my gosh, I have my beloved next to me with our child in her belly. I have this young, beautiful daughter who's jumping up and down. My life is amazing. Oh my God. Like, and like, he's just like, it's a simple moment. It's like the moment that you get at the end of a vacation, right? But it's just in that moment, day to day, happening more often. That's when you're living fully lived. And then turns out, after that moment, he has like a peak experience. He's like, I just was walking down. I was thinking of you, dude. It was so good. I wanted to text you, but both my hands were full. But it was so beautiful, man. Let me just tell you. And then you know what he tells me? They show up at home after this trip, and their friends have completely rearranged their house into a party zone as a baby blessing. And he walks into a surprise of all their community and best friends, welcoming them into their home. And he's like, I thought I was already maxed out at the peak experience of walking down the street. And then I had to expand I have goosebumps as I tell you this, if you can see that. I hope if you feel it too. But then he's like walking into the most beautiful, epic baby blessing surprise with food and music and friends and gifts. And he's like, in a previous life, I would not be able to handle that. I would not be able to handle the amount of love and abundance I'm receiving. Abundance being health, wealth, and love, right? Not just wealth. And it's overwhelming for people. People think coming into like presence is serene and peace. No, 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 no. If that's like a detachment version of it, that's handleable. Actual presence is overwhelming AF. It is so overwhelming. It's like everything is happening all at once. Like, wow. It's like being in an orgy, you're just like, whoa, where do I look? Where do I touch? Whose hand is that? This is incredible, right? It's like life is like that every day, right? And it goes up and down still. It's not perfect. Like I still have the things, and you bounce out and you come back up. And so That's the indicator. That's the indicator that you're living like fully you. You're choosing yourself. You're fully lived, because you're just like, this is crazy. Life is this amazing. Like a whole, like even this too, universe, even this. Oh my gosh, okay. Like, let me hold on, let me be here. And you're constantly in the practice of like, let me be here, let me be here, because all this beauty is happening.
Right.
That's like what life is like day to day.
Right. And so to someone that knows that they are constricted and like I hear you when you say that it's overwhelming to a lot of people to receive that much joy and to receive that much abundance or accolades or like whatever it is that it's like we put on
Awesome.
this pedestal that we dream about, but then if and when it actually comes, it's like, can you, my favorite way to ask is how much love can you tolerate? How much wealth can you tolerate receiving? Because that word is such a trigger word, but it shows like the limit in a way that it actually like highlights it.
Yeah.
So, what would you say to somebody that is aware that there is, this is a good one, it just clicked, that let's say that they're aware that they are so close, but it's not quite coming in. How does that moment, how would you like work someone through that moment of letting that love in and letting whatever is there, that joy, that high vibrational tone, how would you explain to them to let it in?
Yeah. So it's really individual. It's a great question, right? Because that person is at the precipice. They're done
Mhm.
playing the achievement game and they want to play the fulfillment game. They want to let all that in and they want to be able to be with it, right? But because they don't, they delay it into an achievement that they need to work towards. Then they get there, and by that time, they've advanced so much that it's no longer fulfilling, and then they need a new one, right? So this is like just to show the patterning of what we do is like we want that moment, but we delay it, so we have something to work towards, and our system can feel safe and secure as we're working towards something. And then by the time we get there, it's really not the thing that we want anymore. In a fulfillment game, you're with it constantly, so there's an on flow of being with it all the time. So if you are finding yourself in that place, which is such a beautiful place to be, um, and for me, again, it's took taking me a 10-year plus journey of working with so many coaches. I constantly, at a minimum, have two coaches, even right now, to this day. I have two amazing coaches, minimum, in my life at all times, because I know I can always develop with them. And they help me in the expanse of the permission. To me, it's hard because it is about receiving permission. To me, it's like it's one of the reasons I'm dedicated to becoming that first adult, is because I want to give the transmission and the permission to others to do that, because that's what I've received from little pieces from other people. And I realize I've been looking for a role model my whole life, and I just have to be that. Like, that's what we're all here for, be the role models we never had. So that transmission is kind of the piece, because then there's so much intensity and fear. You kind of, for a couple of reasons. Number one, you want a handhold because you're afraid to move into it. Number two, you're unsure of what actually will occur. You're unsure of how you react to it. So many of my clients are just like, this new thing is happening. How do I relate to it? What is the appropriate way to relate to this? Because it's so new. My old patterning is saying this, but if I don't do that, what is it that I do? Like, they don't know where to anchor in, right?
Right.
But then the final thing is, in addition to those three, okay, is you need someone to celebrate with. You need someone to, celebration is one of the biggest needle movers to increase achievement in your life. Okay.
Can you
This
say that again?
celebration is one of the biggest needle movers to increase achievement in your life. Okay. And by achievement, I mean what you are able to experience in this lifetime. The more you celebrate, the more you're able to do that. And we skip out on this, like, oh, it's not such a big deal, or we'll celebrate when we get there, right? And and then our system is overloaded with all these things that have occurred, but don't have completion points. And when we are full and we don't have completion points, then we're not we don't have capacity for the next thing. So with this person who's at this edge, one thing is we need to create capacity inside of them to receive. So there's a lot of celebrating on what has already occurred, moving that out, right? I have a specific process that I teach about celebration. It's not just like, let's dance with music on, and Taylor Swift or something. Like, no, it's just a full process that you have to like mentally, emotionally move through. That is the end of the cycle. And we clear out all that stuff. So there's more capacity. We create emotional capacity. So we have to clear out a lot of like the emotional charge and pain from childhood, or the first person you dated, or the last relationship you're in. I mean, wherever it exists, So clearing that out, and so all of those pieces ultimately are where I would begin. I don't know for each person where it's right. In my process, I believe with the emotional capacity increase, then the secondary thing is the communication of like clearing out bad blood, clearing out past stuff, communicating to old authority figures, creating boundaries and sovereignty, and just really operating. And like that's how I was able to be in a relationship with four people, with kids and a business and a team and my social life and time for me, um, is because I just really knew my sovereignty, I knew my kingdom. I'm like, this is my kingdom, this is where I operate, these are my queens. Okay, like let me go out and but like we're really being clear. So there's a lot of that clearing out. A lot of it is clearing out the shit that we've learned because we don't have to be so busy, we don't have to be so overwhelmed all the time. We just don't. And then the third layer is then around coming to like, wow, I'm the creator of my life. And when you see there's different patterning, like touch points that need to sync up together, like I weave that narrative. But when you see that, that's overwhelming in of itself. Wow, I'm creating this. Wow, okay, whoa, like what does this mean, right? Like there's this powerful saying that having is evidence of wanting, right? So we need to clear that up. If you have these things in your life, some part of you wants them. That's why they're there. So if you're unhappy with some parts, there's a lot to uncover, right? And so that whole work around the quantum field and manifestations to understand like what is it you really want, what parts of you are not on board and calling in this other thing, and then rewiring all that. So that opens up the first layer of like expansiveness to be with, right? Because now you've done the other work and you start there. Then we go back with that expansiveness to heal the inner child. And then we go into the mastery level. And then that's where the capacity is more full, more open all the time. And you're just flowing and riding with life. And you're just like, like the most crazy stuff begins to happen. It's like people that feel like miracles are occurring every day. Like for me, I'll be somewhere and I'll be eating at a restaurant, and then like my favorite song will come on. And I'll be like, oh my God, I love this song. And then like a person that I love will walk in. I'm like, oh my gosh, and then like they did try my dessert. And it's just like, how could you be here right now? Or how could that happen over there? Or whatever, like I went to a restaurant one time and I ended up just chatting with this guy. And then I'm like, well, what's your name? And he goes, Jaymin. I'm like, get out of here. That's my name, right? And he went on to become like one of my first clients and deep friend, and we climbed mountains together. And it's just like this wildness of like, wow, okay, this is what's happening, right? And it was just really, really cool. It's like the expansion that happens just from the person that's a stranger in the restaurant 2 tables away, then becomes an intertwined, incredible relationship, when you're in that ability to receive it all. But when you're not, and you're like, this toast is a little bit burnt and this drink is a little bit sugary, and man, and we're just not available to all those things. So I hope that answers the question, but there's a series to me of what to do. And I think the big mistake people make is they want the one bullet. They're like, well, in that moment, do I go to shadow work? Do I go into sovereignty? Do I go into emotional stuff? Like, which one do I do? And to me, it's like you need to be in the mastery of all of them. I sequence it in a specific way in a fully lived method because I've just seen it work. Like, I do not guarantee results in what I do, but so far we have 100% results for every person who's gone through, right? So the sequence does matter, the focus and the invitations daily, all that matters to unwind it, right? But it's unique to each person, and that's the cool thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I call it just having the emotional capacity. It's like if you don't have the emotional capacity to do your shadow work, it can trip you up and you can get stuck in a hole for like months
Yeah,
because you were prematurely tapping on a well that wasn't ready to be open. And so that's often where it's like, yes, have a process. Like, do you journal? Do you tap? Do you meditate? Do you call a friend? Like, what is the process, right? But also, life is going to deliver you the triggers to do the shadow work. Like,
yeah,
we don't necessarily need to go digging, digging, digging. And that being said, like you mentioned self-sabotage a couple times, and yes, I bring that one up a lot because I like to teach quantum leaping, which is like, how do we actually have a platform and jump timelines and work with our multidimensional self to recreate a significant change in our reality? I'm an
Yeah.
intense lady. I like intense practices. So I'm like, okay, let's do the quantum leaping. But
Yeah.
what happens with the quantum leap is like someone will take a leap, and also speaking from my own experience, is like you take a quantum leap and then how do you stabilize in that new frequency so that you don't all of a sudden like plummet down, and like the lottery story, right? If somebody wins a lottery, they don't think they're worthy, they haven't done all their self-worth, so they literally cannot
Mhm.
hold the frequency of that much wealth, and they literally cannot hold the frequency of that much abundance, so they just blow it up basically.
Yeah.
So that's also like when you're talking about doing what you're doing, the process is like each of the foundational steps. And what I'm hearing is that each of those foundational steps creates like a new foundation at each step, in
Yeah.
essence, so that you're not like, okay, well, I had this peak experience and then what happens? And so
Yeah.
that's part of what I teach with quantum leaping. It's like you leap into that frequency, but then at that point, and this is where it gets really exciting, is how do you manage and maintain the frequency that you were able to ascend to, so that it is
Yeah.
not just a fleeting peak experience, but it becomes the foundational base currency for where you then operate at. And
Yeah.
that's where I get really excited about mastery and the energy stuff, and playing with things kind of more on a I don't know, extreme level, I would say.
Yeah, I love that, and that helps give me an art. Like just gave me this idea of like this articulation that like, yeah, the what you're creating, right? When you're switching from the achievement game into the fulfillment game, is actually the capacity to be in any frequency, anytime, right? And
Right.
experience it there. So I love that because I never thought about it that way, but that's ultimately what it is. It's like once you create the capacity, you can literally just go into any reality ultimately that you want, right? And you
Totally.
can be with it. So it's not about like, oh, like 'cause so many people will make that mistake, right? Like they'll do this thing and then they'll drop it, right? And Gay Hendricks called that the upper limit problem,
Right.
right? To me, is not a problem at all. To me, it's a natural part of the human growth evolution, but I like the context that it provides around this sort of thing happens, the sabotage. And it's just like, yeah, let's just wherever you are right now, wherever you want to go, let's just create the capacity in you. Let's just make you a human being who has a full capacity. And then you can go anywhere, right? And that's the fun part. That's what makes life exciting. To me, like that's like the life journey I want to be on.
Yeah. Yeah, I really appreciate that. When I was a little girl, I always said I like to believe in angels and fairies just simply because it makes life more interesting. And then the first
Mhm.
company that I founded was the Earth Angels Academy, had the Earth Angels program. And it's like these little things that when we're younger, and when I'm talking about like soul purpose and leading people into that as well, it's not like what did you want to be when you grew up, but it was what brought you the most joy as a child. And that
Mhm.
what brought you the most joy as a child literally can be turned into a career if
Yeah,
you know how to work that energy and work the playing field of like the endless possibilities that we're co-creating with at all times. But it's also similarly like having that emotional capacity. It's similar to the sense that I trust people. I don't want to say that I necessarily trust people more, but I have, I would say, a strong resonance of trust with people that I know have hit rock bottom and have also been able to pull themselves out. And rock bottom is like, it's different for everyone. But when
yeah,
somebody has been able to hit rock bottom and has known the way to come out, rather than, like, for instance, I was trained as a psychologist, I have a degree in psychology. And one of the things that I actually had not necessarily a problem with, but amusing with, was people supporting other people getting out of, let's say, addictions, because I think it's an easy example here, but that had never been addicted, that had never
mm,
actually had an addiction problem, because you
yeah,
just don't know the roadmap.
right,
You
right,
don't know the way out from the inside of that experience. And that's one of the things that I do love about the coaching world, is that your life experience in and of itself and the way that you've been able to handle it and move through it becomes your capacity to help and serve others.
yeah, yeah.
And yeah, I love it. I'm a big fan of the
Beautiful.
coaching industry. I know it has its own shadows and its own dogma and its own like
Yeah,
a whole thing, but I'm with you on the coaching thing. Like my life always grows exponentially faster and better when I have a coach that I'm aligned to and that is there like watching the back spots of my own patterns and
100%. And
catching me through that and helping me find the way.
yeah, it's like, how do I relate to this new thing? If you're not growing, if like if you know how to relate to everything in your life, then you're not really growing, right? So I'm growing so rapidly. I'm just like, I want this next coach who's gonna help me relate to this next new thing. And my gosh, the depth and the level of coach that I get to work with now is just so cool, right? And the
Yeah.
stuff we're doing is like, even that, like even that, okay, cool. Like let's like that. So to me, um, I think for a long time there's this idea like, I'll just go to a friend or la da da da. You got to go to someone who knows the thing you're talking about, like
Mhm.
and it's joy. There's a joy in finding like the best expert on something in their field and like downloading their codes, and
Oh,
like and
absolutely.
thing. Like I love like when I get to make big investments into coaches, I'm just like it's edgy and it's fun. And I know like for me, any program that I'm a part of, I know I'm gonna get 10x results. You know why? Because I show up like there's an extra zero at the end. So if it's like a $3,000 program, I show up like it's a $30,000 program. If it's a $30,000 program, I show up like it's a $300,000 program. I did a year long program from here in Bali where the calls were at 2 in the morning every week for a year. For a year, I did it, and they're just like, I can't believe you're on these calls, And I'm like, I'm here because I'm treating this is a 30K program. I'm treating this like a $300,000 program. I'm not missing a single minute of this. And I think like if so if you are already working with coaches, which I hope you are, or you're getting started, just think for yourself. If you're starting with a $3,000 program, show up like it's $30,000, and just watch your results. Just watch what happens when you're in the transmission field of this person who's done the work, and choose wisely. There's lots of people out there claiming different things, but find people who have the connections to you or referral network or testimonials or whatever. But find the real deals and just show up like you paid 10x for it, and you'll get 10x results.
Yeah, the real deals are out there, that's for sure. I mean,
Yeah,
I've been an out of the closet psychic since my early 20s. And there's all sorts of stigma on the word psychic and like the charlatans and that sort of thing. But there are crooked doctors out there are crooked lawyers out there are crooked cops out there's crooked politicians out there. And so it's just finding the good people in your life. And if you are vibrating and operating as a good person, I call it vibrational integrity. You cannot fake your vibration. You
yeah,
cannot be out of integrity with your vibrational currents because that is a conversation between you and the creator energy of the universe source, however you want to see that. But it's like there's nothing to hide and there's nothing to fake. So if you are in that full vibrational integrity, you're going to be attracting those people, places, things right to you.
yeah.
So with that,
Just gotta pay
Jamin,
attention, let it
what was
in.
that?
Just gotta pay attention to it and let it in.
Absolutely. That's the key. It's let it in. So we all focus so much on what do we need to let go of, what isn't serving me anymore, what da 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 da. And it's like, let it in, let it in, let it in, let it in. Because when you're letting it in, you're letting it in is going to show you where your limits are anyway.
Yeah,
Like you're gonna have to lean into the edges of the limits because you start to get so full that you're like, I'm like, busting at the seams. But
yeah,
that in and of itself, just again, it takes like 5-10 minutes to unwind. When you
yeah.
find what it is, it takes no time at all, but it's that like
Quite rapid.
searching time and what's in the blind spot, that whole kind of dance we do to show that we're doing the work.
Yeah,
But it's
exactly.
like when we start living, the work finds us. And once we have the tools and understanding the process or whatever it is, but that it opens that awareness to say, I'm confident and I'm capable, that I'm going to be able to handle whatever life tosses my way and to be able
Absolutely.
to create in the way that I want to create it. And
Yeah.
that's
To
where I
me,
think I was just gonna say that's where I think that platform of life that you're saying, the leading the fulfilling life or the
fulfillment.
fully lived method, it's like getting to that point in life where you have such rigorous self-confidence that no matter what comes your way is going to be managed.
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
in summary might also be what you're saying as far as being an adult. It's like
Yeah.
it just gets
Same.
managed properly.
Yeah, yeah, and there's this hilarious piece of advice that I got when I was a high flying management consultant and working with these big, Fortune 500 companies in the C suites. And one of my mentors there told me, he goes, Jamin, life is a momentum game. And I think he is in a context of climbing the corporate ladder, and in that context, yeah, not the healthiest. But when you take it into life, just what you're saying is like, whatever you're creating, more of it's going to come. So if you're investing in your growth and you're finding the resonance, you're letting it in, guess what's going to happen? More of that's going to happen, and you build momentum in that way, right? Another way to say this is where attention goes, energy flows, right? So if you're not attending to your growth and you're kind of stagnant, like, energy's not going to flow anywhere. If you're on a vicious cycle or a virtuous cycle, like, that's really up to you. So this idea of like, yeah, I want to be at that place. Success doesn't happen overnight. Like, it just doesn't. You build the momentum, you make the investments, you go through the tough things, you get supported in that. But then the more you receive and let in, the more you receive and let in, and life becomes fully lived. It's beautiful.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us here.
My
And
job.
of course, if you would like to stay connected with Jaymin, which I would obviously say please do, we've got a free gift for you here in the description. It's a 5 life hacks to overcome overwhelm. So again, I think that also kind of goes along hand in hand with what we're talking about here. It's like expanding that capacity so that one can be simply whelmed instead of overwhelmed.
Yes, exactly. You're not gonna get to where you want to be in life if you're constantly in overwhelm. And overwhelm is one of the first like indicators of that limited capacity to, because you're like, oh no, I just can't right now. That's false, right? You never can't, right? And then for so many people, when we do the work, then they're just like, what I really need is support. What I really need is help. What I really need is love. What I really need is, to cry or whatever it might be. That's behind the overwhelm. So these are some life hacks that literally you can use in 1 or 2 minutes. If you're in that state of overwhelm, you don't have to go crying and all this sort of stuff, but they're very potent, very simple, like mindset shifts or questions you can ask yourself or language tools when you're in a state of overwhelm, and just put them to use right away, and immediately it'll expand your capacity, and it's like, I think it's like 45 minutes or something. So it's not even super long.
Beautiful.
You can watch it at 2x speed. Just go to jayminpatel.com/free gift, and you can find these 5 life hacks that I believe every driven person should know, like, to overcome overwhelm. It's just, yeah, I feel like everybody should know these 5.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Well, again, thank you so much for your wisdom. Thank you for being a part of the Beyond the Physical Summit. This has been a percolating dream of mine for about a year now. So to be getting this out here, and yeah, I'm just blown away by what's happening. Like, you're talking synchronicities and things coming, and as opening up and letting it all come together. For me, this summit is one of those things that has been in creation, and the miracles that have come into my life just in having the conversations to put it together has been nothing short of like inspiring to just continue to do more. So I really appreciate that you've been here for the first go, the first round, the first day. It's exciting to have you here, and I really hope that everyone who's listening connects, get that over, or the 5 life hacks to overcome overwhelm, and we will absolutely be in touch and see you soon. So
I
thank you
love
so
it. Thank you,
much.
Sitara. I really appreciate it. And I can't wait to learn from the other speakers as well. So I'll be tuning in.
I'm telling you, these conversations, so good. All right. Mwah.
Adios. Bye.